Today is day 3 of 30 days of sharing some ideas and experiences from my book, Heal My Voice, An Evolutionary Woman's Journey, to spark conversation and offer a place for reflection by asking questions and sharing some of the topics in the book. So I want you to know all of these stories are my stories, and they're either my personal stories or they are about the projects that we did with Heal My Voice and Heal My Voice Sweden. And it's from my perspective. And I kind of laugh and say this because my mother picked up the book and was like, well, where are the other women's stories? And I said, I know, I've done that, 10 projects with women's stories. They're amazing. They're on Amazon. And their inspiration. And this book really was part of a closure for me of leading the 9-month programs and then the transition to doing things like the writing incubator with Heal My Voice. So, all right, so today the question is, what does it mean to heal? What does it mean to heal? And I started this section with a quote from Anne Lamott, and I'll just read that to you. And I felt like my heart had been so thoroughly and irreparably broken that there could be no real joy again. That at best there might eventually be a little contentment. Everyone wanted me to get help and rejoin life, pick up the pieces and move on. And I tried to. I wanted to. But I just had to lie in the mud with my arms wrapped around myself, eyes closed, grieving, until I didn't have to anymore. So I wanted to just talk about healing. To me, healing is about coming into balance in your life. So if it's healing the physical is care for the body. Healing the emotional is care for the feelings. And they're connected. Mind, body, spirit. We hear those words put together, right? I was thinking about when my uncle broke his hip years ago. It has never been healed properly. And there's a lot of debate whether or not it was a botched surgery or it was because he didn't really exercise. When you break a hip or have a hip replacement, and then you go through the operation, to heal your physical body hurts. You have to walk on it. There's discomfort. And I know my uncle, God bless him, my Uncle Ron, spent, hours and hours every day, morning, noon, and night, in front of his computer, sitting. He had a very stationary life. And so not to judge him, but to just say, when you've had a physical something happen, it requires some pain to actually heal the body. There is pain. And it's the same way with healing the emotional. That to really process this emotional trauma, loss, grief, change, disappointment, discouragement, there are feelings. And sometimes people want to just push the feelings down and not go into this. Oh, that's too painful to think about. That's too painful to remember. But the thing is, all of that is bottled up inside of you. And I would even say that it gets into the cells of your physical body. It becomes a part of you. So feelings are a clue. And whether or not it's something that just happened and you're feeling, the feelings can feel overwhelming, or as Anne Lamott talks about, just being in it, until you're finished with being in it, that feelings come up even when we heal something as a clue for as information, as self-care. And what I know about feelings, I know the other day I had this wave of sadness. And I mean, I could feel like, oh my gosh, like I feel so sad. And I just stopped and I just closed my eyes and I just let myself feel the sadness. And I took a moment to ask questions. You know, why am I feeling sad? Is there something that just happened that kind of triggered that memory of, or that feeling of sadness? Is there something for me to do with the sadness? And for me, in that moment, just taking the time to acknowledge it, it dissipated. And sometimes taking that moment, there will be something that clues you in. You know, it's an anniversary of something, or just you'll see something. Actually, right now I see someone walking their dog outside, and if it was a dog, for instance, that reminded me of a dog I had lost, who had died, you know, it might bring a wave. It could bring a wave of anything. It could bring a wave of sadness. It can bring a wave of joy. And I feel like that's actually the point. When you can allow the feelings to, when you can acknowledge all of your feelings, it actually expands the range of what is possible to feel. And so I remember a story years ago when I started going to Al-Anon. It was 1985. My second daughter had been born, and for the first time, I really couldn't keep it all together. Having two small babies, or a toddler and a baby, and working full time, and in a relationship where there was alcoholism, and also seeing the family history, starting to wake up to the family history that was there. And someone was talking about the pain that we feel and was describing it as like having a splinter in your finger. Now, you know that to get a splinter out of your finger, you could use tweezers and pull, and for a moment, it's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. But maybe the splinter is deeper, and you know you're going to have to cut away some of the skin to pull out that splinter. And what happens when we don't give a voice to the emotions, then it's like keeping a splinter in your finger that starts to get infected, and maybe you're going to then wrap a bandage around it to try to hide it or try to keep it contained. Or maybe you roll down the window of your car and you hold your hand out the window because it feels better to have the wind on your hand. And all the antics that we go through to try to stop the process of feeling. So I feel like that's what, the biggest thing I would say is when you feel anything, pause. You know, it's like all of a sudden you feel joy. It's like, like I'm going to pause here. I'm going to just feel it. I'm going to let that joy bubble up. I'm going to let that fulfillment, that happiness, that feeling come in even more. And ask questions. Even when it's joy, ask questions. And I'll tell you why. Because the more you can ask questions and interact with all the feelings that you're having, the more awareness you have, the more the wider range you have, where you can really use the clues that are there for self-care, for more fulfillment in your life, for following your desires and your dreams and your visions, noticing where you're holding yourself back. All of these things, feelings are an amazing clue. So pick your creative self-expression, whether it's writing or art or photography or music or dancing, and let yourself express and feel it all. Well, tomorrow begins 14 days of sharing my personal stories I'm going to begin with, and that's the first half of the book, are my personal stories. So I'm going to begin with a story about self-love called I Love You Just the Way You Are. And then the 14th story there is Where Are You Going? Living in flow as a daily practice. And if you want to read the whole book, it's available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle formats. And I will be sharing for 27 more days quotes from the book during this video series. Thanks for listening. So much love. Mwah!